Evolution. Consider a group of 12 red beetles that live in bushes with green leaves. Their population will grow by sexual reproduction and therefore can generate variations. Suppose the crow eats the beetles. The more beetles the crow eats, the fewer beetles are available to reproduce. Case 1. A color variation arises during reproduction, so that there is one beetle that is green in color instead of red. This beetle moreover can pass the color, so all its progeny beetles are green. Crows cannot see the green colored beetles on the green leaves of the bushes and therefore cannot eat them. The progeny of green beetles is not eaten, while the progeny of red beetles continues to be eaten. As a result, there are more and more green beetles than the red ones in the beetle population. Case 2. Again a color variation arises during reproduction, but now it results in a beetle that is blue in color. This beetle can pass the color on to its progeny so that all its progeny beetles are blue. Crows can see the blue colored beetles in the green leaves of the bushes as well as they can see the red ones, and therefore can eat them. In the population as it expands, there are a few blue beetles, but most are red. But at this point, an elephant comes by and stamps on the bushes where the beetles live. This kills most of the beetles. By chance, the few beetles that have survived are mostly blue. The beetle population slowly expands again, but now the beetles in the population are mostly blue. In both cases, what started out as a rare variation came to be a common characteristic in the population. In other words, the frequency of an inherited trait changed over generations. Now consider the case 3. In this case, as the beetle population begins to expand, the bushes start suffering from a plant disease. The average weight of adult beetles decreases, but there is no genetic change occurring. After a few beetle generations, the plant disease is eliminated. At this time, what would we expect the weight of the beetles to be? The beetles will grow in normal size. Acquired and inherited traits. Traits are the qualities or features that distinguish an organism, like the hair color, height, skin color, voice, and so on. However, the traits can be acquired traits and inherited traits. The acquired traits cannot be passed on genetically, while the inherited traits can be passed on to the next generation. For example, if we breed a group of mice, all their progeny will have tails as expected. Now, if the tails of these mice are cut in each generation for 20 generations, do these tailless mice have tailless progeny? The answer is no. And it makes sense because the removal of the tail cannot change the genes of the germ cells of the mice. Charles Darwin theory of evolution. Charles Darwin conducted various experiments which led him to formulate his hypothesis that evolution took place due to natural selection, the struggle for existence, and the survival of the fittest. Darwin's theory of evolution tells us how life evolved from simple to more complex forms. The first primitive organisms would arise from further chemical synthesis. Experiment conducted by Stanley L. Myler and Harold C. Urey in 1953. They assembled an atmosphere similar to that thought to exist on Earth only. This had molecules like ammonia, methane, hydrogen gas and nitrogen, but no oxygen over water. This was maintained at a temperature just below 100 degrees Celsius, and sparks were passed through the mixture of gases to stimulate lighting. At the end of a week, 15% of carbon from methane had been converted to simple compounds of carbon, including amino acids, which makes up the protein molecules. Speciation. Speciation occurs when one species splits into two species which later evolve into distinct lineages. There are three kinds of barriers for gene flow. They are allopatric, sympatric, and parapatric. Allopatric speciation occurs when geographic barriers prevent the gene flow between populations. They will develop new traits and eventually won't be able to interbreed. Sympatric speciation occurs when species gain increase in the number of chromosomes. Eventually, the germ cells of the two groups cannot fuse with each other, or a new variation emerges in which species A females will not mate with species Z males but only with species A males. Parapatric speciation. This time the populations are not isolated by a physical barrier but are instead beside each other. Individuals within the population only mate with individuals in their immediate area and produce a hybrid zone.